Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let's get started. Bailey limped beside me along the potholed farm road, ears flicking at every rustle from rain-soaked corn. The chapel was 2 ridgelines behind us now, but its lesson, trust has teeth, still gnawed my ribs harder than the bruises. I replayed Julian's blow, Cass's panicked eyes, the way fear could scoop the marrow out of decent folks and leave nothing but reflex. Betrayal hurts more than any broken bone, but the ribs are what still throb every time I draw a deep breath. I keep the recorder pressed to my sternum when I cough so the mic doesn't clip. That trick works, most of the time. I'm Riley Hart, former investigative reporter for the Daily Lantern. This will be my 5th full recording since the world folded in on itself. The farmhouse was a few miles away. If the rumors were true, maybe the woman there would have a working radio. Maybe she'd know if there was anyone still out there broadcasting. Maybe she'd have a story worth recording. That single rumor, passed by a scavenger who traded me aspirin for canned beans, pulled us through sleet and darkness. A working radio meant proof that voices, not just screams, still traveled the air. We found the farmhouse at dawn, porch sagging, windows boarded tight but unbarricaded, the kind of quiet that felt less like safety and more like abandonment. Inside, the living room rug was rolled back to reveal floorboards pried up around a trunk-size void. Whoever had lived there was gone, and with them the shortwave set I'd hoped to borrow. All that remained was a cigarette tin nailed to a joist, holding 3 cracked vacuum tubes and a sun-bleached topo map. Pinned beside the map, in handwriting steady as a draftsman's stencil, was a note. Signal last heard on 1620 came from the microwave tower on Laurel Ridge. If you can fix what's broken, the world will listen. CD, 2 initials and a chance. I folded the map, slid the vacuum tubes into my vest and scratched a single word on the joist. Trying. Bailey barked once, as if seconding the vow. We left the empty house behind and followed the ridge road until twilight lightning etched a dish-shaped silhouette against the clouds. The access road had collapsed in spots where runoff gnawed away the asphalt. Bailey and I sloshed through ankle-deep mud until we reached a chain-link gate hanging by a single hinge. On the other side sat the main blockhouse, cinder block walls, 1 steel door, and a smaller service hatch to the subterranean cable tunnels. A weathered US telecommunications tag rattled in the wind. Knock, wait, knock again. Nothing. My flashlight beam caught a notice taped to the door. Shelter in use. Keep voices low. Noise draws them. A hand-drawn arrow pointed toward the service hatch, where a pickaxe had pried the padlock clean off. The hatch yawned black. Cold, damp air smelling of earth and distant mildew drifted out. Bailey gave a low whine but did not back away. She has better instincts than I do. I eased the hatch inward and descended iron rungs slick with condensation. For anyone who has never set foot in a microwave relay maintenance system, picture a series of concrete tubes 8 feet tall, lined with steel cable trays and rusted conduit. They run beneath the Appalachian spine like veins, linking tower to tower in straight utilitarian lines. Stand still long enough and you can taste copper in the air. My light skimmed across a handwritten map pinned to the wall. A spiderweb of shafts, each labelled with narrow red marks, and a small diagram of the hill above us. Below the map, a chalk legend. Red X, high infected density, blue dot gear cache, green arrow, safe route. The next chalk mark read simply, quiet or die. Footsteps echoed too much, so I tightened my boots, forcing the leather to flex less. Bailey padded ahead, nails ticking softly. Inside 20 meters, I found the source of the surface glow, a bank of antique broadcast monitors running from a squat diesel generator the size of a large chest freezer. The generator's muffler was routed through a broken ventilation louver, wrapped in what looked like furnace insulation to muffle the exhaust note. Smart. A single figure hunched over a waveform display, grey-streaked braid, denim jacket patched with an old NPR logo, and a headset that, by rights, belonged in a museum. She didn't turn until Bailey barked. Even then, the woman only flinched a little, pausing her audio playback with thumb and forefinger like a surgeon suspending a heartbeat. "Dog's friend or dog's enemy?" she asked. "Friend if you're civil," I said, voice low. "And you're carrying a cassette recorder?" "Still works. Batteries are harder to find, but I manage." She pulled the headset off. "Clara DeWitt, senior engineer for WISA until the signal died. Actually, I guess I'm senior everything now, on account of being the only one left who cares about getting a voice beyond these hills." I introduced myself. Her eyebrows rose. "Riley Hart. You hosted that series on misused relief funds in Monroeville. I liked your sign-off. Truth gets louder when the wrong people cover their ears. Guess it didn't get loud enough." "I'm trying again," I said. "Mind if I document?" She gestured at the recorder. "Only if you help keep the juice flowing. The tower's main line fried weeks ago. I need a bigger generator topside to push even a low-power burst. There's one in the storage tunnel, but it takes 2 to haul." I glanced at my taped-up ribs. Pain shot across my chest at the mere thought of lifting. Clara noticed. "Don't need muscle, just steady hands and quiet steps," she said. "The infected down there? Half of them respond more to clang than light. You hold the flashlight. I'll pull. State your name and role for the record." "Clara Jean DeWitt, age 61, broadcast engineer, frequency coordination specialist, and apparently janitor of the apocalypse. Been camped here since early June, after Pittsburgh's Highmark transmitter went dark." "Why stay when the city's emptied?" "Because nobody deserved silence. I built an emergency loop, a calm, factual rundown of what happened during the first 72 hours. If survivors tuned an old radio, I wanted them to know they weren't crazy, that someone else kept time. But to broadcast statewide, I need 10 kilowatts. This baby downstairs is 4. Bailey perked up at a scuff of movement in the far corridor. I lowered my voice further. "Tell me what you saw when the signal cut." Clara took a breath, eyes tracking imagined bars on an old EAS readout. "Night of March 15th. We were already running on a skeleton crew. 1 host, 2 board ops, me. The host, Devon, was fielding calls about barricades on the parkway. Then the emergency tone hijacked us, ordered immediate shelter. 30 seconds later, the building's power grid surged. I heard breakers pop like gunshots. The aux generator sputtered but never spun up. In the dark, I watched our city turn to firelight across the river." She paused, listening to distant water drip. Devon kept talking to fill dead air, but with no carrier wave, his voice never left the studio. That stuck with me. Words meant to help, lost in a mute room while people screamed on the streets below. I swore that wouldn't happen twice. Clara opened a battered Pelican case. Inside lay 3 labeled reels of 1/4-inch tape, each shielded by plastic flanges. "Chronology 1, early symptoms, containment failure. Together they run 18 minutes, she said. If I can loop them every hour, folks might learn something before they blunder into trouble. Most of the surface stations are dead, but microwave bounce can reach whoever still has a battery radio within 100 miles. She powered down the small generator, killing every light but my flashlight and 1 emergency lamp. Silence pressed in. Even Bailey held her breath. "Step gently," Clara warned. "The infected cluster near the sump where condensation drips. Sound like wind chimes draws them in. We stay on the dry side." My recorder remained in my vest pocket, mic poking out. Every footfall hissed faintly on tape oxide. The storage tunnel sloped at a 3% grade, slick with algae. Concrete gave way to corrugated steel pipe big enough for a utility cart. The rank smell of stagnant water grew stronger. 10 yards in, a figure shambled across the adjoining branch. Head canted sideways, jaw slack, skin more ash than flesh. It bumped the wall, rebounded, and kept walking, blind to our flashlight's narrow beam. Bailey growled low, almost subaudible. I clicked my tongue. She stilled. Clara slowed. "These ones use echo more than eyes. Tunnel amplifies everything. Talk later. We sidestepped. My boot brushed a fallen spanner. It rattled. The infected head snapped our direction. In less than a heartbeat it lunged, arms pinwheeling for balance. I swung my flashlight, catching the creature across the temple. It hit the floor hard enough to rattle teeth but still writhed. Clara lifted a length of rebar, drove the blunt end down once. The tunnel fell silent again, save for my pulse thrumming in my ears. "Sorry," Clara whispered. "Not proud of that, but I've learned the cost of hesitation." We resumed. The spare unit rested on a dolly. A Honda diesel, 90 kilos dry weight, fuel tank half full. A coil of 6-gauge cable lay nearby, termination lugs bright with fresh solder. Clara handed me the cable while she heaved at the handle. Every squeak echoed. 30 feet. 40. A low moan drifted up from behind. Then another, closer. Shadows pitched sideways under my flashlight. 3, maybe 4 silhouettes wading through ankle-deep water. I tasted iron on the back of my tongue, the earlier chapel beating reminding me how fragile ribs are. Clara hissed, "Push and don't stop." Bailey barked once, sharp, a warning. The infected answered with an awful chorus. We reached a junction where the tunnel widened for a service alcove. Clara swerved the dolly inside. I followed, clipping the cable behind to trip pursuers. I clicked the recorder's side button without thinking. Infected approaching junction D4, at least 6. Metal footsteps splashed. One infected tripped on the trailing cable, crashing face first. Bailey darted forward, seized the creature's pant leg, yanking it sideways. I always forget how strong 40 pounds of shepherd mix can be. The second infected vaulted the first and lunged at Clara. She ducked, swinging the rebar into its shin. Bones snapped like dry twigs. The scream that followed was mercifully short. The head met the tunnel wall, and the body slumped. Clara locked eyes with me. "We have 30 seconds tops." We tipped the dolly upright, wedged wooden blocks under the wheels, and steadied the generator against the alcove's steel wall. Clara jammed the starter cord into position. I snapped the fuel valve open, then thought of the noise. "No recoil start," I said. "Compressed air?" "Searchlight battery in the locker behind you," she replied. "Inverter starts the motor quietly. That's why I drafted you." The locker contained a yellow case labeled Porta Air APS-12. I connected the air hose, dialed pressure to 2 bar, and jammed the chuck onto the generator's start port. The diesel coughed soft as a kitten, then purred. Sound baffles swallowed most of the vibration, but infected still rushed the alcove. Shadows tumbled over one another, scrambling for purchase. Bailey barked. I yanked the cable out of their path and slammed the locker door to create a barrier. Clara grabbed my arm. "Now we run," she mouthed. We left the infected clawing at the steel panel, while the generator idled behind them like a faint heartbeat. The climb back to the tower's ground floor was agony. My ribs ground against each breath, and the dolly wheels squealed despite Clara's best efforts to muffle them with rags. Yet somehow, we emerged into the blockhouse's service bay without drawing company. Clara flipped a transfer switch. Fluorescent tubes crackled to life overhead, showing dusty racks of microwave amps, some hanging by frayed cokes. She plugged the 6-gauge leads into a patch panel and toggled another breaker labeled E-band booster. An oscilloscope flickered. Carrier wave, clean. Voltage, acceptable. Clara pressed the play lever on chronology 1. Tape hiss filled the monitors, then her recorded voice, calm, level, almost soothing. "This is an emergency information broadcast for anyone within range. On day 0, the pathogen showed primary transmission through bodily fluid. Symptoms: elevated body temperature, disorientation, loss of pain response." She let the reel spin, eyes wet. "I never got to run this," she murmured. "Devon would have made it sound poetic, but facts beat poetry when people bleed." I checked my recorder and set it on the control desk so it could capture both our breathing and the historic message behind us. Thunder ripped outside. The lights flickered. Clara's head snapped toward a panel where 3 red LEDs danced erratically. Strike hit the mast, she said. Ground fault incoming. A flash whitened every surface. The room popped like a camera flashbulb, and suddenly the monitors were dead. Acrid smoke curled from the E-band booster. The diesel sputtered but held. Clara hurled a wrench. It clanged off the rack. She sagged against the wall, eyes closed. "All that for 30 seconds, she whispered. I touched her shoulder. Still recorded locally. Still matters. Not enough. People needed to hear it now. A fresh noise drowned us. The unmistakable hollow clang of the service hatch slamming open. Something, or many somethings, had found the ladder. Bailey's ears flattened. She growled, low and constant. I pocketed my recorder. Time to go. The only exit not blocked by tunnels was the exterior catwalk leading to the dish platform. 60 feet up, into rain and lightning. Clara hesitated, glancing at the racks. "They'll trample the reels," she said. "Then grab them." She snatched the pelican. We pounded up the metal staircase as thunder shook every weld. Halfway I dared a look back. Infected poured from the service hatch, silhouettes jerking in strobe flashes. Their shrieks echoed off the tower's steel like warped bird calls. Wind howled across the catwalk. Rain sliced sideways, stinging skin. I pushed the recorder inside my jacket to keep it dry, praying the mic didn't dunk out. At the dish platform, there was nowhere else to climb. Above us, the parabolic reflector stood like a giant rusted sail. But behind it, a maintenance ladder descended to a forested slope, where the hill dropped steeply away from the main entrance. Clara fumbled with her flashlight. Never used that ladder. Not sure if it's intact. "Only choice," I said. Bailey went first. Smart dog. The rung spacing forced me sideways to keep my ribs from grinding. Clara handed down the pelican, then followed. Lightning cracked again, showing the infected spilling onto the lower catwalk, slipping on wet steel but gaining. Halfway down, one rung snapped under my boot. Pain flared, but I kept my grip. We reached the tree line. Mossy earth cushioned our landing. Clara snapped a glow stick and jammed it into a hollow log to lure the infected toward dead ground. A clever trick I'd never seen. We fought through briars until the tower was a ghost against the storm. We ducked into an old ranger shed, roof intact, walls full of carpenter bee holes. Clara set the pelican on a workbench, hands shaking. "I need time to bind the reels," she said. "Moisture ruins oxide." "Talk while you work," I said, propping the recorder nearby. "Clara, why those 18 minutes? Why not something hopeful?" "Because hope without truth is a trap. Early on, officials kept saying help was on the way. People waited on rooftops until the firestorms reached them. I'd rather give hard facts and let listeners choose their next move." She peeled waterproof tape, sealing plastic edges. "Who taught you to rig sound baffles in the tunnel?" "Same person who taught me Morse at 13. My dad. Old Navy signalman. He drilled one rule. Noise has weight. Make sure you can carry it." She looked up. "You've been carrying noise a long time too, haven't you?" I nodded. "Investigations, yes, but they felt cleaner. The stakes were contracts, not lives." Clara's gaze softened. "Your work mattered. I wouldn't have recognized you if it didn't. People remember earnest voices." The rain eased. Distant howls drifted on the wind, but none close. We took stock. 1 pelican case, 3 master reels safe. My recorder still spun. Clara's small generator would drown soon without diesel. Yet she smiled, almost proud. "You know what?" She cracked open the case. "I want your voice on tape too. The record shouldn't be mine alone." I hesitated. "Give me a moment," she insisted. "Why did you keep recording after the newsroom fell?" I clicked to record. "Because I'm afraid of silence more than I'm afraid of the infected. Silence is where we forget who we were. These tapes, they're not rescue flares. They're headstones you can carry in a pocket. Somebody needs to write our epitaph before no one remembers letters." Clara nodded, eyes glistening. She turned the reel again. Tape hiss returned. Bailey wagged once, sensing the moment lighten. Thunder rumbled farther off now. The infected's chorus waned with it. We had, for a fleeting hour, the world to ourselves. Fuel cans lined one wall of the shed. Clara ran a finger over the gauges. Less than 3 gallons combined, maybe 5 hours at idle. The bigger generator sat idle behind a mob of infected. Even if they dispersed, another lightning strike could roast the booster again. I mulled over options. We could try a shortwave set, range smaller but easier power. Clara lifted a cracked transceiver from a shelf. Final amp is blown, she sighed. Back to square one. I pulled my recorder closer. Then we carry the message the old-fashioned way. She raised an eyebrow. I travel, I said. Next tower, next camp, next ham operator. I'll dub copies, or read them aloud. Your 18 minutes will live. Clara exhaled, relief and surrender in one breath. Then you'll need this. She opened a second compartment in the Pelican. Inside lay a sealed cassette labeled Master Copy Riley. She pressed it into my palm. Take Bailey and go southeast at first light, she said. Tower 9 miles downslope still has intact dishes. I reconned it weeks ago. If the control gear survived, a modest inverter will push 5 watts. Enough for county-wide FM. I looked at the case. What about you? Someone has to guard what's left here, and maybe someday repair that booster. She patted the shed wall like it was part of her ribcage. Besides, I'm too stubborn to run again. Bailey nudges my elbow, tail sweeping pine needles. The rain that hammered us all night shrinks to a mist that seems to hover rather than fall, turning every branch into a silver wire. My ribs object to every breath, but the bigger generator's steady pulse behind the shed reminds me Clara still fights the silence. I tug the shoulder strap of my rucksack, lighter now that most of the food inside became last night's payment for those master reels, and start the descent. The trail Clara marked on her crumpled gas station map bends south-southeast, keeping to the ridge spine another mile before dropping toward the Conemaugh Gap. The new relay tower, according to her margin notes, stands on a limestone knob overlooking the river valley, where US Route 219 once funneled commuters into Johnstown. 9 miles as the crow flies, 12 on human legs, maybe 16 if I detour around anything rabid. I leave the ranger shed's door cracked just enough for Clara to spot daylight and close it again. She raises 2 fingers in a scout's salute, then disappears. Her silhouette shrinks to a small square of warmth inside that bleak box long after the ridge swallows the shed from view. Songbirds, sparse, calls shorter, likely conserving energy now that insects dwindle. Deer, still present, tracks in mud near a salt lick stump. Herds seem smaller. Infected wildlife, no direct encounters. Rumors want me to believe deer can carry the pathogen. Evidence thin, but fear thick. Human activity. One distant gun report before dawn, echo lost in valleys. Hard to gauge range, rifle crack at least 3 ridgelines east. I hum softly, old newsroom habit to keep lungs expanding, and let the recorder capture the hiss of wind through white pine. Bailey trots ahead, nose low, paws silent on duff. 2 hours in, the trail runs hard against a shale cliff that forces me downslope into thicker brush. That's when Bailey stiffens. I kill my hum, crouch, and flick off the recorder to save tape while I listen. Nothing. Then, metal on metal, faint, deliberate. Clink, clink, pause, clink. Someone working with tools. I pull binoculars from my vest. 30 yards below, on an overgrown logging spur, a lanky man kneels beside a Honda trail bike. The rear tire sits off the rim, chain slack. The man wipes grease onto fatigues that still carry a Pennsylvania National Guard patch. No infected visible, risk worth the question. I wave one arm and call out quietly, "Need help?" Bailey stays heel. The man startles, reaches for a holstered sidearm, sees the dog, then sees me, recorder in open hand like a badge of identity instead of a weapon. "Only if you've got a 14mm wrench," he says, voice scratchy. "Axle nut won't budge." I climb down, keep palms visible. Riley Hart, traveling reporter. Dog's name is Bailey. No wrench that size, but I do have questions you might answer. He snorts. Figures. Caleb Reeves, specialist Pennsylvania Guard. Well, used to be. Bike's useless without the wrench. Guess I've got time to chat. Specialist Reeves, where were you stationed when the outbreak hit? Joint Base Fort Indiantown Gap. They told us we'd be shipping to Philly to help run checkpoints. Orders changed hourly. By the time our bus convoy left, every interchange on I-76 jammed. We took back roads through Lancaster. Big mistake. The trapped drivers weren't just infected. Plenty were alive and scared. One fuel truck went up, took the lead bus with it. I was in the last bus, watched the highway melt. He swallows. The ridge wind moves his hair like thin grass. Got separated. Found this dirt bike outside a shuttered fire station near Altoona and kept moving west. Figuring rural meant safer. Doesn't really, just quieter. You? I give him the condensed version. Newspaper, tapes, chapel betrayal, relay tower. He nods, fascinated. Heard a voice on FM last week saying something about a chronology broadcast. Caught maybe 5 seconds before static. My pulse kicks. That was Clara's loop, the one that fried. If you heard that fragment 50 miles away, then the partial broadcast carried farther than she guessed. Caleb smiles for the first time. You fix towers, you make friends. The next tower's on that limestone knob. Could use a second pair of hands. If you can help free my axle, I'll escort you. Bike's shot either way, but I know generators. We barter. 1 can of condensed soup for his guard-issue multi-tool. 14mm socket present. He loosens the nut, reseats the tire, pumps it with a frame-mount hand pump. 10 minutes later, I secure the multi-tool to my belt. Caleb hikes instead of riding, safer to keep formation with Bailey. The ridge path collapses into a slope of switchbacks choked by blackberry vines. My ribs yell at every lateral twist. Halfway down, the sun bakes fog into damp heat. Sweat soaks my collar. We break at an abandoned picnic area overlooking the Conemaugh River. Concrete tables fractured by frost heave lean like tombstones. Someone carved help into the moss-covered concrete, the letters bleached by months of sun. Caleb examines the sky. See that contrail? Military jet, high altitude. Somebody still flying. I follow his finger. A thin white line streaks true east. My recorder captures our silence. 30 seconds of wind and distant river rush before Caleb speaks again. Air power means quarantine cordons, maybe supply drops. If DC still functions, they'll want eyes on major river valleys. Could be good news. Or a reminder we're cut off, I counter. Jets can cross states. We can barely cross counties. Caleb shrugs. Hope's a tool. Use it wrong and you saw through your own leg. Use it right, you cut rope. To reach the limestone knob, we need to ford the river at the old rail bridge near New Florence. The town, population under 800 pre-outbreak, looks abandoned except for makeshift barricades formed from hay bales and snowplows. Spray paint warns, keep out, sick inside. But the only movement comes from wind-spun flags made of torn flannel. We skirt the main street, stepping over spent shotgun shells. Bailey sniffs a charred grill, whines. Caleb peers into the window of a family diner and curses under his breath. Not profanity, just the hiss of pity. 4 shapes slump at a corner booth, skeletal now, heads together like a frozen prayer circle. No infected awake. Perhaps the heat or starvation finished them months ago. My recorder is rolling. I whisper timestamps for future listeners, catalog storefront names, Town Drug, Johnson's Feed, the Florence Theatre with its marquee letters scattered across the sidewalk, T-Bro, T-Nevka-E. The coincidence stops me cold. The very words from Clara's tape shimmer in absence on that theatre sign, the broadcast that never came. Caleb notices. Maybe the universe likes irony, he says. We press on. The bridge is girder and timber, decayed but intact. River height sits below spring floodlines, safe. Halfway across, Bailey barks at ripples downstream. Figures thrash in muddy water, 3 infected floundering, jaws snapping at fish they'll never catch. One slams into a pylon and floats under. The other 2 drift, arms beating uselessly. I record the sound, mark the moment. Observation. Infected cannot swim with coordination. They paddle by instinct, wasteful. Caleb adds, "Yet currents carry them miles. No settlement near water is truly secure." On far shore, I scratch these notes on Clara's map. Noontime. Heat thick enough to taste. We move uphill along a quarry access road littered with crushed limestone that squeaks under boots. Noise risk high. Caleb suggests we alternate steps. He plants foot while I lift mine, halving the continuous crunch, so it sounds to distant ears like one traveller, not two. Half a mile below the summit stands an outbuilding once used for explosive storage. Its steel door is missing. Inside, racks of broken wooden crates. A coil of coax feeder leans in a corner, still wrapped. Jackpot. Caleb runs a gloved hand along the cable. Better than anything we'd find in town. Enough length to bypass corroded runs at the tower top if needed. He shoulders the coil. I take the generator primer he found wedged behind crates, essentially a 12-volt jump box with alligator clips and a reed switch. Weight aggravates my ribs, but future broadcast depends on it. We push on, drinking from canteens flavored with iodine. The Knob's Crown hosts Tower 17, an 80-foot lattice structure painted FAA white and orange. Miraculously, its obstruction beacon still blinks, solar-charged perhaps. The blockhouse door stands ajar. Bailey sniffs once, ears perked, tail neutral. Caleb draws his sidearm, motions me left. I ready my flashlight, spare batteries taped to the handle, and slip inside. Smell hits first, stale electronics, dust, something faintly chemical, ozone from a blown breaker. But no decay, no infected. Racks line the walls, faceplates stamped Commonwealth Telecom relay, some equipment missing, obvious salvage. The main breaker handle hangs in on position, yet zero indicators glow. Battery backup stripped. Caleb whistles softly. "Look, signal path still intact." He taps a waveguide running up the tower spine. "Replace a few feed lines, add power, we can broadcast." Power. The word ricochets around the room. The portable inverter in my pack can handle 500 watts, nowhere near the kilowatts Clara hoped for. But Caleb says FM micro-broadcast might reach 20 or 30 miles from this height. He connects my jump box to a breaker subpanel, tests continuity, clean. Next, we inspect a diesel day tank outside, half full, surprisingly uncontaminated. Someone refilled it within the last 3 months. Tower 17 appears serviceable. Fuel condition good. Main faults: empty UPS bay, missing exciter module. Caleb believes a direct line from Pelican reel deck through a limiter into the power amp could work if we bypass filtering. Might raise harmonic noise, but speech range will punch through. Let's try. We get to work. He mounts the Honda bike on its kickstand outside and lashes the generator primer to the diesel starter. I splice coax, breathing shallow to quiet rib pain. Bailey dozes under the shade of a cedar, one eye half open. 3 hours into repairs, Bailey springs up, barking toward the logging road. I grab binoculars. A person advances steadily, firearm cradled but not aimed. A patrol cap sports a silver badge reflecting sunlight. Westmoreland County Sheriff's Department. We freeze. The figure raises a hand, palm out. "I come in peace," a woman's voice calls. "Doing my rounds." She keeps distance until Bailey sniffs her boots, then holsters the weapon. Introduction. Officer Lorna Ames, 42, deputy assigned to the area before the collapse. She maintains patrol out of habit and claims she has shepherded a group of 17 civilians hiding on nearby farmland. I glance at Caleb. He nods, sees no immediate threat. "Deputy Ames, why patrol an empty valley?" "Because radio said National Guard relief would sweep this corridor if violence stayed low. We've kept fights down. My folks grow potatoes, trap rabbits, not paradise but stable." "You have working radio?" "A single sideband set, battery-powered, range maybe 15 miles with the hill in the way." When I explain our broadcast plan, her eyes widen. "A clear county-wide message? That could bring more hungry mouths, or help coordinate defense. I'll risk it. But if you broadcast, say where to avoid so nomads don't swarm. I promise an honest update. Resources scarce, farmland group small, No large refuge here. Ames lifts a backpack from her shoulders, produces a bag of dried apples. Trade. You'll need nutrition if you're patching cables all night. She leaves after giving the tower perimeter a quick once-over with binoculars, noting no infected movement. She invites us to her farm once the signal goes live, proof we're allies. Sodium orange sunset bleeds across stratocumulus. We pull the diesel starter. It coughs, then hums. Voltage meters climb. Caleb tweaks bias knobs. I feed one of Clara's master reels into the deck. Route audio through a limiter he wired from spare op amps. Headphones on, I monitor playback. Clara's calm voice fills my ears. I drop the record head of my cassette deck onto an empty tape, making a backup in case the reel wears out. Test, 5x5. This is Riley Hart atop Tower 17, transmitting the broadcast that never came. If you hear my voice, know you are not alone. I hand the mic to Caleb. He gives frequency info, broadcast schedule, top of every hour, 18-minute loop, then a 5-minute live update if generator fuel allows. We engage transmit. VU meters dance, power draw stable. A faint hiss fills the blockhouse, the sweet hum of a carrier wave. Bailey tilts her head, ears perked, as if sensing our voices rebound from unseen radios across dark hills. 20 minutes later, the tower's UHF receiver squawks, someone keying a handheld set on our guard channel. Tower voice, this is Jacob on the Creek Road, signal strong. First clear words I've heard in months, grateful. Caleb grins so wide his cheeks crack dust. I reply, giving non-specific location and reminding Jacob to stay cautious. Another voice checks in from a ham set near Latrobe. Then two more, static-laced, but distinct. The dead valley hums with living speech again. I record every call sign, every snatch of relief in trembling voices. Static snaps, Bailey barks. Generator RPM wavers, something clogging the exhaust. Caleb sprints out. I follow. A dense mass of vines twined over the muffler. No, human arms. An infected, half-charred emerged from brush, collapsed across the exhaust stack. Another lurches from shadows. More step out, drawn by sound and diesel smell. We drag the body off, but 20 more infected stagger uphill. The diesel's roar only escalates their frenzy. Caleb grabs a length of coax, whips it like a flail, catching one in the jaw. I shoulder him away. Inside, remote kill. We dive into the blockhouse, slam the door, throw the bolt. Infected slam steel with bodies. Walls vibrate. Fuel line still open. Shutting generator kills broadcast. Caleb's gaze darts. We can drop power but leave exciter running on battery. Carrier whisper no roar. He yanks a switch. Diesel dies. Fluorescent lights quit. The only illumination is my flashlight bouncing off racks. Outside, the pounding slows, then stops. Silence thick as tar. Generator off equals no tape loop. Battery exciter alone carries nothing intelligible. I propose live voice on the handheld transceiver every half hour until dawn, then try diesel again during daylight when infected hide from sun. Caleb objects. Daytime range lower due to heat shimmer. Better to relocate diesel downwind, run a long axle shaft, isolate noise. We argue in whispers while infected shuffle outside, brushing steel. I stop, force a breath against rib pain. Priority is preserving message. Clara risked everything for this content. Caleb softens. Right, let's evac tapes, stash them remote, then adapt. We open floor hatch to a crawl space used for fiber feeds. The conduit runs 60 yards to the base of a boulder field. Perfect escape if we cut the weather stripping. Caleb unscrews the hatch. We lower Bailey first. She lands soft. I drop the Pelican. Static crackles on the UHF again. Deputy Ames. Hear him banging your way. You all right? I whisper status. She offers distraction shots to draw infected. No, I hiss. Too risky. She does it anyway. 2 distant rifle cracks. The pounding at our door eases. Caleb flashes a strained grin. Run. The crawl space is coffin tight. I keep recorder running through every breath rattles my ribs against conduit brackets. Bailey leads by nose. Behind us, infected regather. One drops into the crawl space, knees scraping tin. Caleb, Last in line, grabs a loose ferrous pipe section and rams it backward. A wet snap, then stillness. We crawl faster. We exit onto talus under moonlight. Deputy Ames meets us, rifle smoking. She waves us downhill to a root cellar on her farm, half a mile away through tall fescue and rustling corn. Inside the cellar, lantern glow paints mud walls. 17 civilians indeed. Elders, teens, one infant asleep in a laundry basket. They stare like pilgrims at us and our dog and our case full of magnetic scripture. A little girl asks, "Are you the radio man?" I nod. She smiles like dawn. Caleb wires my cassette deck into the farm's single sideband. Power draw minor. We broadcast Clara's loop at 5-minute intervals. Range maybe 10 miles, but signal clean. Farm folk gather round the speaker, hearing for the first time a coherent account of how the outbreak began. Some weep, others stand straighter, as if bearings realign inside them. Deputy Ames thanks us with jars of potato mash and a strip of rabbit jerky for Bailey. I pull Caleb aside. "We need bigger reach. Tower still workable once infected wander." He agrees. We build a noise baffle box around the diesel, dig a shallow pit, angle exhaust downwind. I know muffler tricks. "After your bike wheel," I tease. He chuckles quietly. First genuine laugh I've heard since the world ended. I click record while survivors settle into straw bedding. Tape 5, continuation. Broadcast reached ears. Infected forced retreat, but message survived. Deputy Lorna Ames hosts us until generator redesign. Caleb Reeves stays as chief engineer. At dawn, we reclaim Tower 17. Bailey sniffs the cellar air, then curls at my feet. I promised an open road for this story, and the road keeps bending. If Chapter 1 of the collapse was silence, Chapter 2 is voices finding one another through rust and static. Tomorrow, we test how many voices fit on one thin wire before it snaps. I swap fresh batteries, slide a new tape into the recorder. The counter resets to 0. I label it Tape 6 draft. "End of Tape 5, I whisper, though I know endings are illusions now. In the dark, a rooster crows early, confused or eager I can't tell. Bailey lifts her head. Somewhere beyond the cellar door, night air carries a distant rumble. Perhaps thunder, perhaps troop transport. Either way, the world answers back. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.